Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Brad Walter, and today we're going to be talking about some of the flight characteristics and the engine out operating procedures for the Piper Seminole, which is our training aircraft that we use at my flight school. All right, the first thing I want to cover is some of the aerodynamic characteristics of flying a multi-engine aircraft and some of the left-turning tendencies that are involved with it. One of the main ones is P factor, and that's based on your propeller and the direction that it turns, and the descending blade on the right side of the propeller is uh, based on your angle of attack and the way that the plane sits is getting a bigger bite of air and therefore creating more thrust. And the engine on the right side of the plane, that descending blade is farther from the center line than it is on the left side. Therefore, you have a longer arm that's going to want to push you in that left direction. For accelerated slipstream, P factor is that it gives you a yawing motion to the left. Accelerated slipstream gives you a rolling motion to the left, and that's based on the amount of lift that P factor is generating. The P factor is generating more lift farther out on your wing because it's moving more air based on P factor. So your arm again on the right wing is greater than your arm on the left wing. Therefore, it gives you a rolling motion to the left. Spiraling slipstream gives you a yawing motion to the left. So this is based on pressure differences based on Bernoulli's principle. Your air moving faster has less pressure. Air moving slower has greater pressure. On the right side of the plane, the greater pressure from P factor is on the outboard side, the greater pressure is on the inboard side, the less pressure is on the outside, so the air is directed away from the tail of the plane. For the left engine of that aircraft, it's just the opposite. The greater pressure is on the outside because the air is moving faster, and then the air on the inside, is moving slower, and then the air on the inside has a lower pressure, so that air coming off the left engine directs towards the tail of the plane, causing that yawing motion to the left. And then the last left turning tendency is torque, and that's just based on the engines turning in the direction that they do. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So your engines are turning clockwise, it makes the plane want to torque in the opposite direction, which is going to give you that rolling motion to the left. So all of these are based on having a critical engine. The Seminole that I'm currently flying has counter-rotating propellers, which means the two engines rotate in the opposite directions. Therefore, most of these left-turning tendencies are not a factor. So the Seminole that I'm flying right now technically does not have a critical engine since it has counter-rotating propellers. But that is not the case for a lot of training light twin aircraft. Alright, VMC is another thing that we need to be very aware of, especially when we get into a single engine scenario. And the way that they determine your VMC speed for your aircraft is based on CFR 25-149, and they basically use the worst case scenario to determine what your VMC speed is going to be. So they use standard day. You would think that would give you better performance, meaning cooler, but that's just saying that your engine that is operating at max power is going to produce more thrust on a standard day than if it was a hot day, so it's going to create a greater turning tendency for you. Max power on the operating engine, that one kind of falls in line with standard day. The max power is going to be pushing you more in whichever direction your failed engine is. Having an aft CG, so if your CG is farther aft, you have less of an arm from your rudder to your center of gravity, therefore it's more difficult. You have a shorter arm, so you have less power to be able to direct your nose back to a straight line. The critical engine windmilling, So with that critical engine windmilling, it's creating a lot more drag, so that's going to further increase your aircraft's tendency to turn into the dead engine. Flaps and gear up. This is due to the keel effect that your flaps and landing gear give the aircraft. So it almost helps you, it's like the keel of a boat. It helps you stay more in a straight line just because of those things protruding from the aircraft. So that would help you if they were down, so it's going to hurt you with them being up. And then with your angle of bank, so if you're banked into the dead engine, it's going to make you turn in that direction worse as well. So if you bank, if you raise the dead engine up, it's going to help convert some of your vertical component of lift to a horizontal component of lift to eliminate some of your slipping through the air when you have an engine out. And then most unfavorable weight is another one that's going to make it more difficult for you trying to fly in a single engine scenario. These are some of the critical speeds for the Piper Seminole that we use for training. VSO is our stall speed with landing gear flaps extended. VMC is that one that we just discussed, 56, that's our minimum control speed. And VSI, that's our stall speed with our in a clean configuration with the flaps and gear up. And then VYSE, that's the speed that we're going to be pitching for when we're trying to maintain that directional control. VY with a single engine, and it's also the same with no engine out, with two engines still running. It's still going to be 88 knots. Finally, we come to our emergency procedures for the Piper Seminole. If we have an engine fail on us, the first thing we want to do is make sure we're maintaining that directional control, and we want to pitch for our blue line, which in the Seminole is 88. We're going to put our mixture, props, and throttles all full forward, try and get the most power we can out of whatever engine's operating. Then we're going to identify and verify. So we're going to identify which engine failed by our dead foot. So whatever rudder you need to push on and your foot that is not doing any work or doing very minimal work, that is typically the engine that has failed. And you're going to verify that by pulling back the throttle of whichever foot is dead. So if your left foot isn't doing any work, you're going to pull back on the left throttle and verify that that is indeed the engine that failed. Once you do that, you'll just close that throttle all the way of the inoperative engine, and then you'll go through securing that engine. So you're going to turn off fuel, close your fuel selector, close your mixture, feather that prop, turn off your mags, turn off your alternator, and just get that engine in a stabilized position. It's going to help you out a lot once you get that propeller feathered to help minimize that drag. And then from there, you can go in for your single engine landing. So the big thing for any of these emergencies that you have, or just flying in general, you really want to know your plane, know your engine out characteristics, know if you do have that critical engine or not, and you need to memorize those emergency procedures when you have an engine failure. Those are immediate action items. You're not going to want to be fumbling around for a checklist, trying to read through that as you're trying to maintain directional control and keep that airplane flying as best you can. And ultimately, with all this stuff, you want to make sure you stay calm. Staying calm will help you mentally work through these items. And these are the references that I used to put together this presentation. Thank you.